ASEAN.
Hello, I'm Atira Notajuddin, your host for Navigate ASEAN, a series of interviews with some of the region's leading public figures, brought to you by the ASEAN Post. In today's episode, we speak to Vanda Lengkong, Head of Disaster Risk Management for Asia region at Plan International, about the pandemic impacts on women, girls, and children. Welcome, Vanda.
Thank you, Atira.
Okay, so Vanda, according to the United Nations, the pandemic threatens to roll back decades of hard-won progress in the fight against inequalities between women and men. In your opinion, what are some of the responses that governments and decision makers can or should take to mitigate the impacts of the COVID-19 crisis on women and girls?
Yes, it is a very serious impact for people worldwide. You and I, we also face and challenge difficulties perhaps throughout these 2022 months. Since 2020, with the outbreak of the COVID-19, at least 80 million people or more people and their family into extreme poverty. This is according to ADB publication recently in 2021. And of course, this pandemic has posed a significant challenge for children and particularly girls and young women in the Asia-Pacific region, including ASEAN. And of course, in the sector of protection, education, health, and access to economic empowerment. Since the pandemic started in March 2020 until now, we know that it has resulted in never-ending lockdowns, movement restriction, health effects, and changing needs of communities that are increasing the risk of child and early forced marriage, gender-based violence, early pregnancy, and on education with the closure of schools, expose children to online learning, but also when they access an online learning, it is increased their risk to online abuse. And at the end, it is the indirect of social economic effect. Unemployed young women likely to be extensive and long-term as we experience now. And it could potentially reversing the decades of effort that dedicated to improving the lives of vulnerable groups, including women, girls, and young people. And so for Plan International, we consult with many girls and young women to hear from them how the impact of the COVID-19 to their lives. And we commit to support in all of the country offices where we have presence, and we launch basically a global response for this COVID-19. And in our region, in Asia-Pacific region, we support 15 countries in order to addressing the specific needs of girls and young women and their family in combating COVID-19 in the area of education, protection, sexual health and reproductive, and economic empowerment.
Okay, so the pandemic is forcing many girls in the region and around the world out of school and into early marriage. Unfortunately, child brides and underage marriages were already commonplace in the region even before the COVID-19 pandemic, especially among impoverished communities. But in your opinion, Vanda, what are some of the solutions to eradicate child marriages in Southeast Asia?
Also good question, and something that we know as a challenge and something that we have to prioritize in our region. Well, if I may give a simple answer, there are 2 points. Simple answer: increase awareness, knowledge and skill on child protection and gender-based violence, making sure that there is a very clear and accessible reporting and referral mechanism, but also embedded the COVID-19 prevention and management and become a priority. That's basically an easy one, yeah. But then more complicated one, because the issue itself is not easy to be solved. So Plan International recently released our report on time to act to eliminating child early and forced marriage and reducing adolescent pregnancy in Asia Pacific region. But one thing that really interesting in our report this time is really to emphasize on let's go digital. How we use digital technology, leverage digital technology to reach scale and generate impact. And so there are few solutions that have been offered and have been recommended through this report. Number one is ensuring girls and young women are included and consulted in decisions affecting their lives. Child marriage is about choices of girls, women themselves. So they have to be informed. Second, to create a national child protection system which are fully functional and resourced to prevent sexual exploitation and gender-based violence, in particular child marriage. Third, mainstreaming information on sexual and reproductive health and rights and gender equality in the national curriculum. Again, invest and educate in education. The fourth one is to have a strong and legal framework prohibiting child early and forced marriage, including revision of law relating to marriage to establish at least 18 as the minimum age of marriage. For Plan International is a major focus of our work in Asia. And for us, ending child marriage should be engaging girls and young women, developing their skills and capacity so they can be empowered to make decisions about their lives and their future. That's a few solutions that I can able to share for now.
Okay, so Vanda, other than the current health crisis, the inequality and discrimination experienced by marginalized girls and women is being amplified by climate change. But how does the climate crisis affect their rights?
My favorite topic on climate change. So as we all know that climate change is a social and intergenerational injustice, right? That amplify the inequality and discrimination. And we also know with the climate change, with the climate crisis, it is exacerbates the frequency of disaster in our region. And we all know Asia, ASEAN is one of the region that really a disaster prone region. We know that number of floods, landslide, typhoon that continue, the frequency is become higher and higher, and that's because of the impact of the climate change. So when we talk about linking of the climate crisis with girls' rights, we can able to see from 5 different point of view. Number one is from the education side. In the period of crisis that been impacted by the climate change, girls are often forced to drop out of schools. And they also been forced to help their family to make money, do the domestic work, as we mentioned before, helping their siblings to taking care of their sibling. And if they are also out of school, they are not able to get access of information about a climate crisis, climate change, on how they can able to deal with that. Second one is on child marriage. We mentioned about this before, but when it is related with the impact of the climate change, we know that when a family sometimes dealing with disaster, easy way for them to kind of like get income, for example, is basically to offer a marriage for their young girls, because they think that it can able to easily reduce the financial burden to their family. The third one, violence. We all know that whenever there is emergency or disaster during and after extreme weather, girls are increased the risk of violence, exploitation, including trafficking. And this is basically also happening, for example, when they've been exposed to emergency shelter, when they have to be going to those evacuation center during the emergency situation. Fourth, still sexual and reproductive health. Disruption of health services due to disaster will increase unplanned pregnancy and sexual reproductive health. And this is also, if there is no education access, then it becomes more and more higher risk. And lastly, about health. Climate change relate with the rights of girls towards the health issue. They mainly likely to go hungry when food are in short supply, whenever there is any disaster. They are more severe exposed for malnutrition, especially lack of water, especially when they have their period in times of disaster. And for example, during also being pregnant in early age and have again to support their family whenever there is a disaster happen. So these are the 5 kind of like key things of linking of climate change, climate crisis affect the right of the girls.
Okay, so recently there has been a lot of discussion about the role of women leadership in response to COVID-19 and in the post-COVID-19 era. Vanda, why is it important to have more women leaders to build back better?
It's really interesting. We are all women, right? Women leadership in the COVID-19 response has been described as a more collective than individual, more collaborative than competitive, more coaching than commanding. And of course, this is also from my personal view and observation. So like this month, we basically commemorate the International Day of Disaster Risk Reduction with the global community. And the United Nations of DRR just recently giving an award for women leadership in DRR. And one of the winner is from Indonesia. It's a Dr. Rahma Hanifa. And I like her quote when she accepted the award. What she told, when women are provided with opportunity, pathways, and trust, we can achieve beyond our imagination. And during COVID-19, we all know that there are a number of women leaders globally that able to showcase, indicate that they're able to manage and maintain this COVID-19 and leading the COVID-19 response. Name it, New Zealand, German, Finland leader, they not able to flatten the curve, but also they are able to communicate all the information with full of compassionate and then very transparent information. And also because we talk about health issue, education issue, those women leaders able to show that they able to put those sector as a priority when they dealing with the COVID-19. So for me personally, women leadership in building back better is a very important, not only COVID-19, but in the overall disaster management. And we have to invest more and more, and we have to involve them in decision making and sit side by men in order to contribute for strengthening the resilience of a country, of the world towards a future disaster. Over.
Okay, thank you very much, Vanda. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but we hope to have more discussions with you again in the future. Thank you for being with us today on Navigate ASEAN. You can follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and other social media channels by looking for the ASEAN Post. I'm Atira Nutajudin. Thank you and have a good evening.
Navigate ASEAN.